Probably actually the closest thing I have to a straight up D&D like RPG would be Star Wars Imperial Assault. And this is... It's got like attack dice, it's got a ton of miniature figures. You build out the maps based on the scenarios. There's a whole campaign. A whole campaign here you can play, or you can play one-off skirmishes. I've only played a little bit of the campaign, but it was fun. And I mostly played it as a skirmish game with Steph or just family. And it's pretty neat. It's like board game Fire Emblem. So I enjoy that part of Star Wars Imperial Assault. Oh, I should have brought that X-Wing stuff. Because yeah, this has minis, but they're not painted. Though X-Wing is like full minis. And that game's a lot of fun. I play that one more. This one I just bought. I have played it before. I have a review of it coming soon on the site. I think it's next week. In the next week or so, I will have a review up for Bob Ross, The Art of Chill. So, licensed game based on, of course, the legendary painter, Twitch legend, Bob Ross. And it's a whole game about... I played X-Wings once before at my theater professor's house in college. Interesting game. Yeah, I love the idea of moving with those, like, with the rulers, or, like, the different shapes, and you can do, like, curls and stuff, and the dial to determine where you go. Really interesting way of moving in a more freeform manner in a board game and attacking. Yeah, Bob Ross, Art of Chill. So, the whole point of the game is that you are painting alongside of Bob Ross. And you can see there's, at the back of the box, there's an easel, which has, like, the paintings you were trying to paint. And so you're collecting color cards along with paint brushes to paint the different aspects of the painting. But then Bob Ross is also painting alongside, and he's really fast. So you're trying to paint as much as you can before he finishes. The person who gets the most points wins the game. It's kind of like Ticket to Ride. Yeah, it's like Ticket to Ride with Bob Ross, and it actually works pretty well. Like, I don't necessarily feel like I'm painting, but as a set collection game that happens to have Bob Ross in it, it's pretty good. Yeah, so I actually got this at HomeSense. They had a whole bunch of Bob Ross merchandise, and they were like, they heavily marked this game down. Most board game stores have it for like $30 around here, and it was 15 at HomeSense. So nice pickup there. This one from Haba Games, who's best known for kids games like Animal Upon Animal, Rhino Hero. This was their first stab at like more designer games for all ages. So this one is called Karuba, and it's a tile placement slash kind of like Pipe Dream, where you have different adventurers. Like, everyone has their own board, and everyone has like the same layout to start, but then all the tiles, and you're all drawing tiles at the same time, but you can place them anywhere you want. So you're trying to put down paths to make the most efficient routes for your people to go to the different places. You can collect jewels along the way, and it's this really interesting sort of solitaire but competitive tile placement race game thing. It's really neat. I enjoy this one a lot. This one's been works really well with families and competitive players as well, because a lot of interesting choices, even though the mechanics are really simple. So yeah, that's Karuba. 3 more games. This one is a favorite of ours at parties. This one is called Deception: Murder in Hong Kong. So if you've played games like The Resistance, this is sort of a different variation on that, but it's a little more involved. Because, like, my big problem with The Resistance is that there's so little actually happening that, like, it boils down to, like, you're the spy! You're the spy! No, I'm not, and that's, like, the entire game. This one's a little more involved, where the premise is someone's been murdered. And, like, not a player in the game. Yeah, like, someone's been murdered, and everybody in the group, except for one person, is investigating the case. One person is the forensic scientist. They know who did it, but they can't just straight up tell you for reasons. But the thing is, one of the investigators is actually the murderer. So everyone has cards in front of them that have like murder weapons and motives. Well, it was murder weapons and evidence that prove that they are the person that did it. So like everyone closes their eyes. The murderer opens their eyes and says, here's the murder weapon. They point at the cards. Here's the murder weapon, and here's the evidence that points to me. Everyone closes their eyes, and then when everyone opens their eyes again, the forensic scientist draws like 4 random cards that ask questions about the story. And so you don't... Oh man, this box is like a mess. You don't necessarily... Like someone could say like, there's a piece of hair and I use the knife. And now I'll get a question like, what was the victim's build? Was it large, thin, tall, short, disfigured, or fit? And at that point, you have to try and answer these questions in a way that gets people to say, oh, it was Jet with the knife and his hair was left behind. Before you run out of time. And so it's a little like, I like it because like, one, it's a lot of fun trying to put together that story of like who actually did it, like the whodunit part of it. And then also like, as the person who's the murderer, you're not under a lot of pressure to hold your bluff, because it's not just like you did it, yes or no. It's you did it, but can you also name all the things that identify me as actually the killer? So yeah, Deception Murder in Hong Kong, that one is a party favorite of ours, with big groups in particular. I think this one plays up to 12 people. Yeah, 4 to 12 players. And we have the expansion for this as well that we haven't tried. Alright, 2 more games. This one's a favorite of my wife and I's. This one is Lost Cities. And it's by legendary game designer Rainer Knizia. So if you've... if you have followed the... I've heard his name a lot in board game circles about being a legendary designer. I haven't played most of his games. This is the only one I've really played, and I love it. So many neat games. If only the hobby was cheaper. Yes! I mean, there are some really good cheap games. I should actually... I do have a couple, like, small pocket-sized games, like your love letters and whatnot. I love that there's micro games. But yes, like, board gaming is so expensive. Behind the curtain here, there's like 100+ games. I went on a serious shopping spree a couple years ago when I discovered the medium. It was actually kind of funny, because I used to have this thing where I was very judgy about, like, nerdy stuff. And I had this hierarchy of nerdiness where, like, at a certain point, I'm not touching anything on that scale. And, like, board games was on that scale. Like, oh man, the only people that play it are just, like, little kids and loser people who play D&D. And I know that's not true. There's lots of people who play D&D of all sorts, and at some point I would like to play as well. At some point, I do have plans of doing a D&D stream on here. First, I have to learn how to play D&D, then I gotta get the people together and make the stream work for that. But anyway, Steph's coworker invited a bunch of us to play board games at their place. In particular, Dominion. I don't know if you've heard of Dominion, the deck building game. And Steph didn't tell me what games we were playing. She was just like, board game night. And I was like, okay, fine, we playing like Monopoly or something like that. And then when they busted out Dominion, I was like, what the hell are we playing these like nerdy board games for? And so I was like, okay, we'll play. I'm here. We're super far away from the house. There's nothing I can do now. And I ended up loving it. I'd never played anything like it before, and it kind of opened my eyes to kind of pretty much everything after Settlers of Catan, where just like this crazy innovation in the board game space where these games just got really good. And from that point on, I was like, man, I need all these games. I need to catch up on lost time. That's another phenomenon as well with board games. Like, I feel like because of my age and the time I grew up, I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on almost all of video games. Like, I have an Atari 2600 here. It was technically my first console, and I've played everything up until now. With board games, I feel like, man, I've missed, like, decades, if not hundreds of years of stuff. And there's just a part of me that, like, I love that with video games, I feel like I have a pretty comprehensive knowledge of the scene as a whole. But with board games, it's like, oh man, this is all new, and I need to fill in the knowledge in my head now of everything. And so I just, like, rushed out and just bought game after game after game. Now it's like, yeah, we don't have enough space. Board games are really expensive, especially since, like, with video games, if I'm spending $60 on a game or whatever the price is, I can still play it by myself. I can play it online. Board games, like, it has to be game night. You've got to get everyone together, and it becomes a whole thing. So I end up not playing board games that much, or, like, the same game over. Like, there are a lot of the games in the back, like, I've played one time. And so it just ends up not being the most efficient use of money. So yeah, I've slowed down a lot, but yep, that's the rub with board games. I love to have unique ones, but we play them so little. Yeah, that's the challenge. Alright, so, Lost Cities, yes! It's a 2-player card game. It's basically competitive solitaire, where the idea is, like, you're 2 adventurers, and you've challenged each other to, like, travel around the world and complete these adventures. But really what you're trying to do is play 5 sets of cards, numbers 1 through 10, in your own tableau. And so you get points based on, like, which ones you play, but, like, once you play, like, the number 6, you can't play 1 through 5. But then, like, if you're waiting for 2, 3, 4, the person playing with you might have those cards. They might not. They might be coming up in the draw later. So there's a lot of, like, do I play this now, or do I try and play a whole series to get, like, the bonus points and stuff? And it's a lot of fun. The scoring is a little weird, but, like, competitive solitaire with Lost Cities is one of our favorite games to compete against each other. You can also get this on iOS, so if you want to try it out for, like, a few bucks, you can try that out. Actually, this one actually says more than 260,000 copies sold. That's pretty decent for a board game. Last one. I mean, I could be here all night. Maybe that's a separate stream of just, like, here's me with a stack of games, with all the games. Ugh. And I have to remember, I have to get the die from Steph. This is Formula D. This is another one of the first games that really got me into the scene. My wife and I went to a board game cafe and we played this one because I've heard so many cool things about it. And it's basically, it's a racing game. It's a roll and move racing game, but there's more to it than that because everyone gets a gearbox. Let me try and open this up. And the whole idea of the game is, like, depending on what gear you're in, that is the die you roll. So, like, if you're in, like, first gear, you're gonna roll, like, a d4. And then you start one gear at a time and you work your way up each turn until you get to, like, 6th gear, if it's even possible, and you get to roll a d30. And so, yeah, you're getting higher and higher numbers as you increase your gear, but the problem is, once you get to corners, you have to slow down. So you have to, like, downshift and slow down. So there's this constant risk reward of, like, am I going too fast into these corners, or can I push it? And so this is a really interesting dynamic of how fast am I going at which parts of the track. And then the gearboxes as well. So I don't have the sticks out, but yeah, here's the insert that goes in the thing. So there's the easy mode, where you just get, like, generic health points, that yellow box, along with your gears with the squiggly lines. But if you want to get even more elaborate, there's an advanced mode where you then have health bars for the different parts of your car. Oh, D30, that's interesting. I love to get a hold of a bunch of weird dice and roll them. That's the thing about being a game master in tabletop RPGs. I don't get to roll all that much. Yeah. So this one has hit points for the different parts of your car. So you can, like, wear out your tires, your brakes, your gear shift, your suspension, your engine, and your the shocks. Like, depending on what types of things you trigger, you wear out those things independently of each other. Oh, here's one. I saw in... I can't remember which board game website it was, but there's a Harry Potter game coming, and they have what they call a 9 3/4 sided die. And that made me really upset. Like, 1, that's a really awkward shape. 2, there is no such thing as a 3/4 side. Like, it's either it's a side or it's not. Like, just call it a D10. I just tried to picture the HP gauge of my real-life car and imagine it's in peril. Yeah. Yep, I've been there. I've totally driven my car from way too far while it was overheating because I got scared. It was like, oh man, it's overheating, but like I just got on the highway and it seems like as I'm driving forward, it's cooling down. The arrow was going down, and by the time I got home, I took it to like my uncle who's a mechanic, and he's like, dude, you like warped so much of the engine. You can't drive this anymore. And that is how I killed my second car. Yeah, so like I went 0 HP on the engine of my car. RIP.